This is a Relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
On this Monday, January 23rd, we welcome you to Real Talk. It's Jesperson and Hicks, live from the Relay studio in Edmonton's historic Mercer Warehouse. In just a moment, political scientist Dr. Duane Bratt, Charles Adler as well today, and a Positive Reflections presented by Kuby Energy that you will not want to miss.
It's going to make you giggle.
It's intended to make you giggle today. Positive Reflections is typically, it is perpetually and perennially designed to fill your cup, to make you smile, to restore your faith in humanity.
Sure.
But we're taking a bit of a risk on this one today. This one's a little bit cheeky, and this will be in response to these new Health Canada guidelines that are recommending that Canadians limit their alcohol intake to 2 drinks per week. And I know that a lot of you Real Talkers are participating currently in Dry January because you've told us that, and we applaud you and encourage that. As far as we're concerned, the position of this show is the more booze, the better. No, the less booze, the better. I was thinking about our Christmas party, but the less booze, the better. We understand that's the healthy approach to take, right?
Sure.
And we're hearing a lot about millennials, and in particular Gen Z. They have lost their obsession with alcohol.
They have.
Which is great news for everybody. They seem to be less interested in binge drinking. They seem to be less concerned with getting people to boot for them. Is that what the kids are still saying?
Which
That's
is
what we
great.
used to say. Trying to get like your friend's like older brother or older sister to go in and buy, peach schnapps for you from the liquor store when you were 14 or 15 years old. So people are drinking less, and that's great, but not everybody.
No.
And we're going to have some fun with that today in Positive Reflections. It's tongue-in-cheek. Don't write us emails. Everybody have fun. It's Monday morning, and there's a lot of serious things to piss us off. So we figured that maybe we'd have some fun on the less than serious stuff. I want to talk about the Vancouver Canucks treatment of Bruce Boudreau at some point today. But I want to lead off with the story that's been leading the headlines. I don't know if it's fair to say across the country, but probably. I think people are keeping a keen eye on the Alberta legislature after the CBC, Megan Grant and Elise Von Schiel, who do a great job over there, broke this story. It was mid last week, I think Thursday, when people really started getting serious about talking about this story. Did or did not the Alberta Premier's office, Danielle Smith's office, contact Crown prosecutors in relation to cases stemming from charges relating to the Coutts border blockade? Of course you remember this, as the convoy was headed to Ottawa, ultimately occupying our nation's capital. The Coutts border south of Lethbridge was blocked, and charges stemming from that were pretty darn serious after a midnight RCMP raid uncovered a cache of weapons and plans, essentially, as charges would indicate, to inflict violence on law enforcement. They're patrolling that border. It was a tense situation, to be sure. Political scientist Dr. Duane Bratt has been keeping an eye on this story, no doubt. He joins us live from Calgary on this Monday morning. Dr. Bratt, it's always great to welcome you to the show. Thanks for making time for us. Your initial reaction when you first saw rumblings about this story. The Premier said that this was something she wasn't going to be afraid to chime in on. So were you surprised in the least at the allegations?
No. When the story came out, I mean, they're damning allegations. They go much deeper than we had initially thought, but it didn't come out of the blue. I mean, we've got Danielle Smith throughout her leadership campaign, and since she's been premier, saying that public health guidelines around COVID were wrong. She pledged amnesty for those convicted and charged and had to walk that back. We have her on video, not once, not twice, but 3 times, saying that she had called Crown prosecutors about COVID cases. Then they walked that back and said, no, I would not do that. You can't do that. Everybody knows you can't call a Crown prosecutor. I only talked to the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General. And I only focused on, are these charges in the public interest? And are you have a reasonable likelihood of conviction? Both of which are standard operating procedures for any prosecutor. So when the story came that a staffer was emailing Crown prosecutors over the Coutts case, you need to put it into the context of all of these other discussions around COVID. And to simply dismiss it and saying, as Danielle Smith said, if there are emails, or as Rick McIver said yesterday, if there's any evidence, then we'll deal with it. Well, there is a lot of evidence. What this is growing evidence. And I tweeted out this morning the initial video clip of Justin Trudeau after the Globe and Mail published a story using anonymous sources that Trudeau was pressuring Jody Wilson-Raybould over SNC-Lavalin. And the video clip says, he goes, the story in the Globe is false. And of course, it wasn't false, and it ended up becoming a major scandal that led to the resignations of cabinet ministers, principal secretaries, clerk of the Privy Council, you name it. So that's why I put a lot of belief in this story, because of the larger context. And Megan Grant is the crime and courts reporter for the CBC, right? So she is connected to Crown prosecutors. Elise Von Schiele has broken a number of stories that have led to the downfall of cabinet ministers in Alberta. So we're talking two credible reporters here. So I would not just dismiss it because it's anonymous sources. And it's almost like the government is daring the whistleblowers to produce more and more evidence.
Yeah, I mean, and you've sort of run in these circles for, 20, 30 years, and I've been in the business for 20 years. And just because somebody's not plastering their receipts in the window doesn't mean that they don't have the receipts. And there are checks and balances that go into reporting and breaking stories like these. And that goes without saying. The emails, as the CBC report says, sent last fall from a staffer. The allegation is a staffer in the Premier's office, a series of emails to the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service. According to sources who, as you mentioned, Duane, the CBC has agreed not to identify because they fear they could lose their jobs and probably would lose their jobs. So this is like for people that were listening to Danielle Smith's interview, let's say with Rebel News, right, a while ago in December, just before Christmas, when the Premier questioned whether the cases were in the public interest to pursue, whether there was reasonable likelihood of conviction, as you touched on, she said in that interview, quote, "I've put it to the prosecutors and I've asked them to do a review of the cases with those two things in mind. And I'm hopeful that we'll see a true turning of the page," which is a pretty loaded thing for a premier to say. She goes on to say, quote, "And so do you continue on in prosecuting one when the public has moved on? That's the big question that the Crown has got to come to terms with." Then on Friday, like I'm talking 3 days ago, she says definitively that she had not been in contact with Crown prosecutors, right? That followed two previous occasions where she said that she had requested a review of the COVID-related cases. Don't forget the jailed pastors. That's the other story everyone was talking about, asking prosecutors whether it was worth pursuing certain cases. So whether it's a flip-flop, whether it's misspeaking, whether it's getting into a situation with a right-wing news site where you maybe say the fish was this big, maybe it's one of those types of scenarios. Ultimately, how bad can this be for Alberta's premier? I mean, is this the type of thing that ultimately leads to a resignation?
It is very bad, because when we heard the initial comments, we quickly ran into the jailing of pastors for violating public health guidelines and the attendance at their churches, or the Whistle Stop Cafe. We thought about those cases, but this is about Coutts, which shut down the border, cost the Alberta economy, hundreds of millions of dollars. There are very serious charges at play, including conspiracy to murder RCMP officers, the large weapons cache that was seized, and we know that at least one UCP MLA, Grant Hunter, participated in the Coutts blockade. We know that Take Back Alberta, which now controls half of the UCP board, supported and participated in the Coutts border blockade. So this has become a lot bigger. And there's been a lot of misstatements that the premier has made since she's become premier and had to walk those back. And almost all of them involve COVID, right from day one in the press conference, saying, the unvaccinated were the most discriminated group she's ever seen in her lifetime, to promising amnesty and then saying, oh yeah, I can't do that. People have been watching too much US TV and they think I'm a governor. To putting it in the Alberta Human Rights Act and then saying, well, no, we actually can't do that. I'm just going to call up businesses and organizations and tell them what to do. And then reporters call those organizations and those phone calls never happen. So the credibility that the Premier has on COVID cases is in repute. And this is why the story has resonance. If there was no there, why is there an investigation going on with the IT department to try to correlate emails from staffers to Crown prosecutors? Why did they have an emergency caucus meeting on a Saturday night, which is quite rare? Why on Sunday were they all singing from the same hymn book? So what went on in that meeting? Was the purpose of the meeting just to quell any discontent and say, look, if we have an election in 4 months' time, we either hang together or we hang separately?
So they take the weekend. I saw that as the Premier kind of buying herself some time, which is not unusual in politics. She says, listen, there's it could be 30 plus people involved on our team. She says there's more than 400 Crown prosecutors. It's going to take at least the weekend to allow this independent investigation to play out, which is a convenient, politically convenient and strategically decent way of saying, I'm not going to answer questions about this. Not on Saturday, not on Sunday, maybe not into this week. But ultimately, if you buy yourself a few days off the pressure cooker, it's not like the story's going away. Ultimately, what are you expecting to come out of this? I mean, let me ask you, just as a civilian, as an engaged civilian, do you have confidence in the credibility of the so-called independent investigation?
No, I don't. And there's a couple of reasons for that. How in depth are they going to go? Is it possible that this staffer was using a personal email address instead of a government address? Mm-hmm. We heard stories in the immediate days and weeks after the transition that there were staffers, some of them senior, who were still using personal email addresses because the group, many of the people around Smith haven't been in government before. Yes, she's been in politics, but she hasn't been in government. She was even part of the governing party for a few weeks, but never in cabinet and never as premier. So these things can happen. Were they deleted? Yes, there are ways of finding deleted emails, but not over the course of a weekend. And then finally, there are receipts of these emails from the Crown prosecutors involved. And so do we start to get those coming out?
Yeah, I was going to say,
they screenshotted where they remove the recipients and we just have some of the content in there? Because the content is important as well. This wasn't just asking questions like, is this in the public interest and a likelihood of conviction? This was pushing back, forcing the Crown to justify their decisions. Staffers providing evidence that Coutts' charges might have been overblown, right? So this is arguing. That sounds an awful lot like undue pressure to me. So, the story breaks late Thursday. We have some of the fallout over the course of the weekend within UCP circles. More evidence is going to be compiled because now it's not just CBC looking into this. It's going to be all the outlets looking into this.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on this, to be honest with you. Number one, let me make the obvious point that you made as well, is that you can delete emails, but you can't delete them on the recipient side. And so you may have deleted emails out of your sent folder. That doesn't mean that they're deleted in the Crown's inbox. It is possible, right, that you get Danielle Smith's team, keep in mind, everyone says the emails are sent last fall. So when she won the leadership race and she puts this team together that's not necessarily comprised of and this is not a shot across the bow, but they're not all the most experienced. It's not like she inherited, Kenny's staff in the Premier's office. She filled it with her own staff. There are people that may be overzealous or people that were eager to get started, that maybe lacked experience, that maybe lacked an awareness or an understanding of how serious this could be or how poorly that could reflect on the Premier. Is this easily solved by something that happens in politics all the time, which is the Premier going to one of her staffers and saying, sorry, you got to fall on your sword for this one. You're out of here.
Yeah, but that doesn't end the story here. Even if Smith directed the staffer, that's an even bigger issue. But even if she didn't, why would a staffer go out on a limb like this without direct instructions? Well, all they have to do is watch TV. All they have to do is watch her press conferences and her radio show where she condemns the public health restrictions that occurred during COVID, where she makes all of these promises about amnesty and protecting the unvaccinated. We have a pretty good idea right now what Danielle Smith's views are on what the Kenney government did to combat COVID, right? And so was the staffer just going, I am doing the Premier's bidding. She believes in this, and therefore I'm just trying to help out. I've already made some of the connections with Coutts and the Premier and the UCP. So, this is, as I said, this just didn't come out of the blue. This is a much wider context of Smith and COVID. And this wasn't the only COVID story that broke late Thursday either, right? We also have the appointment of Preston Manning to write a report on how the Alberta and federal government harmed Albertans during the course of COVID. And how do we know that report is probably already written? Well, because he's already launched a national citizens inquiry. He's already written a study for the Frontier Center on a sort of fictional account of what an investigation would look like with recommendations. Smith said on her radio show that Manning has already been doing work on this. That's why they hired him. By the way, at $250,000 a year,
it's a nice gig.
$250,000 for the report.
Yeah.
So, once again, we have a Smith wanting to relitigate COVID.
What's the value? I was obviously, I'm sure, I don't know about your friend circle, Duane, but mine is like, they're politically engaged enough to know what's going on, but they don't care about all the nuance. But they all recognize the name Preston Manning. They all recognize the name Stockwell Day. They recognize Ted Morton and like all the crew from like the 80s, 90s, 2000s, the crew that built the Harper machine. And so they understand patronage appointments and golden handshakes and soft parachutes and all these types of things. And over the weekend, it sort of seemed people saying, conservatives in Alberta, you do enough, you wait long enough, you're going to get that big briefcase. And everybody just kind of shrugs and goes, yeah, well, it's just kind of the way it is. But none of them could determine, or none of them could articulate what they suspected might be the value of this report. So for people that are actually watching the government's bottom line,
there is tremendous value in doing a lessons learned report.
Well, obviously,
about what we went through COVID, but it would require credible people, right across the spectrum, experts in this area, deep dive. That's not what this is. This is what it's pretending to be, but it is not. We have one commissioner with one question on their public engagement portal who's already been on record and written a report criticizing the COVID responses, where he suggests at the end, maybe we need to hold those people criminally responsible and financially liable for the harm that they charge. So the conclusion has been written. Now it's just a matter of compiling the evidence to support the conclusion that's already written.
Before we thank you for your time and let you go, we're talking to Professor Duane Bratt out of Calgary's Mount Royal University. You touched on Take Back Alberta really quickly, and I'm wondering, for people that aren't familiar with the name David Parker, for people that aren't familiar with what's going on with this PAC, you talk to people at levels of government, both municipal and provincial, and they're keeping a very keen eye on what's happening here and expecting some major influence, if not already playing out, to play out over the next number of months. Can you bring the average civilian up to speed on Take Back Alberta?
So Take Back Alberta is a group of about 30,000 people largely based in rural Alberta, but not exclusively, who have large financial resources. They played a key organizational role in the leadership review that deposed Jason Kenney. They were involved in Smith's leadership race. They now control half of the board of the UCP because at the AGM, only half of the board positions go open every year, every cycle. They had a meeting a week ago. A week seems like a year ago right now, where they now control the Constituency Association Board in Rimbey, Rocky, Mountain House, and Sundre, which is Jason Nixon's riding, and they may reopen the nomination of Jason Nixon because his main competitor, a guy by the name of Tim Hoven, had been disqualified. They may now reopen that. There was a mass meeting in Bonnyville. These are people who are opposed to the public health restrictions over COVID. They support the Freedom Convoy. They supported Coutts. And they have said that their next step is to start taking back Alberta from municipalities and school boards. So they feel that they've done the job at the provincial level and continuing to do the job at the provincial level and want to expand that to other segments of society.
Anything we're missing, Duane, before we let you go?
That's a lot for one morning. I'll be interested to get what Charles Adler's take on this is.
Yeah.
I was initially thinking when I heard he was on the show, it would have been nice to be with Charles again, but I guess you get to see us independently.
Is Chuck chimed in? He's not chimed in yet. We asked for him at 10 minutes after the hour, but I would love to put you on with him sometime. He wants to, I know he's chomping at the bit. He wants to chime in on Pierre Poilievre's trying to be Rick Mercer, right? With his rants, his walking rants. And so I know that Chuck wants to chime in on that. And I saw Roman Baber,
including Rick Mercer's rant about Pierre Poilievre's pension. That rant?
Yeah, no, I don't think he's going to touch that one. And then did you see Roman Baber with his own cold dead hands tweet over the weekend?
Stove. Yeah, yes, that is the new fight in the culture wars, which actually came out of the United States, but that's okay.
Do you have a gas stove? Do you cook on a gas stove?
No, we just have a regular, range.
Yeah.
But I have a barbecue that's natural gas.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Which has freed up the midnight runs to get propane when you run out.
Attaboy. There you go. Dr. Duane Bratt. Follow him on Twitter at Duane Bratt, like thousands do, for great political insight and analysis. Mount Royal University. We'll talk to you again soon, pal.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, you bet. Do you guys cook on a gas stove?
We cook. No, we've got a range. Yeah.
You got a range.
Yeah.
So when people are saying a range, that means electrical. Is that what everyone's talking about?
Yeah, it's the
and then
thing
there's
that heats
induction.
up bread and
Yeah. So there's there's the induction, which is apparently like the hot new one.
What about you?
Induction can like boil water in 10 seconds. Everybody says, and it gets hot right away, and then it cools right away. Apparently, which is also, I don't know much about them. The big, I don't know if I want to say hullabaloo because that's kind of editorializing, but the concerns are, and I know real talkers that this is not the first time you've heard this. Everybody seems to be talking about this, these reports out of the U.S. that suggest that rates of childhood asthma are up in households that cook on gas ranges. And actually, and I've done a bit of digging because we're thinking of doing a segment on this. We want to do a feature on it, if it's legit, and it appears to be somewhat of a legit story where experts are saying, listen, if you're cooking with a gas range in a house, you should have either the hood fan on. You should try to cook, use the elements in the, I guess they don't call them elements, do they? But you know what I'm saying. The gas jobs in the back. You want to use the ones in the back, they say, or maybe crack a window. You're going, seriously, it's like -30 outside. I'm going to crack a window. It's not going to happen. Maybe keep kids away from it. Who knows? I don't know. A lot of restaurants have used gas ranges for years. In particular, I think people like them because they're sexy.
Yeah.
Like in the sexiest kitchens, they all seem to have the gas ranges, or maybe that's from 10 years ago.
Yeah,
I don't know.
They look nice.
So a lot of people now are saying, like, Matt Gaetz down in the States and a Roman Baber up, and we'll talk about this with Chuck in just a little bit, basically saying, like, you can take my gas range from my cold dead hands. The government's not coming for your fucking gas range. And now I'm seeing people try to get into it, and they're going, you know why the right is and I like that Duane referenced the culture wars, because it is, and now it's funny because you can virtue signal based on what type of fucking stove you use, but people are people are saying, why are all these like far right conservative politicians sort of acting like big heroes, scotch taping, duct taping, painters taping themselves to their gas ranges, and people are saying, well, you got to dig deep, you got to look at who is this going to impact? Who? If people stop using gas stoves, if people stop running gas lines, natural gas lines into houses. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to do that has a furnace.
No.
Are you going to run electric furnaces? Maybe. Maybe. I mean,
maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about my furnace knowledge is weak, except for that I call a guy every 2 years to fix ours. That's about all I know about furnaces. So
all I know about the environment is right now we need all types of power. We need a full spectrum. We need nuclear. We need gas. We need more solar. We need hydro.
We're still using
of
coal
it together. We need all of it together to power this planet right now. So
yeah, Tracy says, listen, you guys, patronage, these patronage appointments, says that's not new. It's been happening for decades. And Tracy's right. It's been happening actually for thousands of years. It's been happening throughout human civilization. Obviously, says the UCP is just choosing to brag about it. Make no mistake, the New Democrats participate in so-called patronage appointments as well. And you might think, like, is this inherently bad? And people are going to go, oh boy, here he goes into the gray areas. But like, obviously, if you're a politician or if you're a corporate leader and people help you get to where you're at and they're competent and skilled and you trust them, then you will add them to your team. That makes perfect sense. It makes zero sense to appoint people to roles that you ideologically do not see along the same lines as the people that you do not trust, people that you do not believe are capable to do the job, for sure. I'm not talking about public servants. Okay, I'm not talking about a conservative government coming in and polling ambulance, EMTs and firefighters to see if they're all conservative. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about people in strategy roles, people in policy roles. Obviously, a conservative government coming in after a New Democrat government will clean house and vice versa. So there's nothing new there, and it shouldn't be particularly surprising. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's okay for somebody that might not be the right choice to lead a public inquiry into a government's pandemic response, including health policy, that really has no credentials there, that maybe hasn't had front-facing political relevance, but make no mistake, has a ton of backroom political relevance. As a matter of fact, could argue he's the straw that stirs the drink. And of course, that $250,000 price tag is going to raise a few eyebrows as well. People are going to say, the Manning loyalist, what do you expect him to do? Work for peanuts? He's Preston freaking Manning. You can let us know what you think all the time at talk@ryanjesperson.com. Of course, that's our email inbox, and you can also use the hashtag RealTalkRJ. That is powered by our friends at Park Power. If you are using a natural gas range, one of those beautiful natural gas ranges like we have in our home, and they can come take it from our cold, dead hands, I recommend that the gas that runs through that range, the gas that runs through your furnace, maybe the gas that's piped right through to that beautiful natural gas fireplace in your backyard, I recommend you get it from Park Power. Why? Well, number one, because they're a friendly local utilities provider. When you get in touch with them, they answer back. Real humans do same day.
Real humans?
John, they employ real humans.
I love hearing a non-robot.
You know what I mean? When you like call a phone number and they're like, hello, and you're like, oh my gosh, what? Parkpower.ca is where you can compare rates on internet, electricity, and natural gas. And they've got a new promo code, a new incentive for Real Talkers. When you bring your business over there, when you sign up, make sure you use the promo code RealTalk23, RealTalk23. For every service that you get from Park Power, they're going to give you $50 off your first bill. That means if you go for the full shebang, natural gas, electricity, and internet, you're going to look at that bill and there's going to be $150 that just evaporates off of it. You don't get that anywhere else except for Park Power. Hey, we've got one more week. Well, you got about 10 days left in January, which means you've still got time to cash in on the buy one, get one free offer from our amazing friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. If you got a hankering for a DQ sandwich, for a dilly bar, for a dairy-free dilly bar that our Intrepid Johnny Hicks loves so much. You grab a 6-pack, you grab a box of 6 dilly bars, DQ sandwiches. You mentioned Real Talk, and that second box is absolutely free at the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. And by the way, grab a signature stack burger while you're there. They're the only quick service burgers that actually look in real life like they look on the ads. The teams at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park do amazing work there.
I will say that's the one thing my wife misses since we went plant-based.
Oh,
She's like,
the signature
DQ
stack burgers?
had the best hamburgers.
They do.
Of any
they're
chain.
next level.
Yeah.
They taste like you're at somebody's house and that person makes you a burger from. That's what they taste like. I mean, don't get me talking about DQ burgers. We'll be here for like 40 minutes. Charles Adler's just going to be like, seriously, you guys? Hey, we're talking about these beautiful. Everybody's you've been in one of these like sort of outdoor fire circles, right? And don't get me wrong. I mean, I love throwing chopped, cured birch onto a ripping fire. I mean, there's nothing like it. But just flicking a switch and getting that natural gas fireplace going, maybe on a brand new stone patio. Nobody reeks like smoke. You can control it. You turn it off when you're done. You don't worry about fire hazards. There's no sparks burning everybody's new jackets. Eden Landscaping designs and builds these things to perfection. You can bring your outdoor space to life. Water features, retaining walls, pergolas, John. They do pergolas. Ooh. Everybody's saying they do Alberta's best pergolas.
Wow.
At Eden Landscaping. Find them online. Get the conversation started today at landscapeedmonton.ca. And I'm happy to announce on this Monday morning, we've got our Real Talk Roundtable locked and loaded for Friday. It's a political one. You're going to be hearing about the Progressive PAC this week. I'll talk to you about that more as the days go on. We're going to talk to 3 of the founding members of Progressive PAC. These Real Talk Roundtables are presented by our friends at Urban Timber. You know that. They're the ones that designed, they conceptualized, they delivered, set up, and now maintain our beautiful studio table, and they can do the same for you. You can visit them online or in their brand new showroom in West Edmonton. And don't limit your sort of understanding of what Urban Timber does to just these stunning custom tables. They do barnwood floors. They do unbelievable boxcar reclaimed wood installations, coffee tables, end tables, wood siding on houses, flooring that will knock people's socks off. You can check out exactly what they do online at urbantimber.ca. All right, before we get to Charles Adler, I want to play this video of Bruce Boudreau coaching because I want to get Chuck's take on this. This is, I mean, could it be Bruce Boudreau's final NHL game behind a bench? Could be. It's possible.
He's getting up to that age.
He's about 68, I think.
And you notice coaches, they're getting in younger and younger now.
They are. But you also talk to players that have played for Bruce Boudreau, and they will go through walls for him.
He's a once-in-a-lifetime coach.
He's a so-called players coach. Mm-hmm. Players have loved him. He's a candid guy. I mean, I remember back when he was coaching the Washington Capitals, and they had those, what were they called, 24/7 or whatever they were?
Yeah.
The video features going behind the scenes, and Boudreau was comical.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, profane and comical, and just his players love him. I mean, look no further than Andrew Cogliano. If you've missed the story, Bruce Boudreau coached the Vancouver Canucks for the last couple of seasons, and you know, he might say it wasn't his finest work. The team would say they didn't play for him. You know, I mean, defenseman Luke Shen said, we feel terrible. He says, we felt like we let him down. The Canucks did not perform how everybody hoped they would. But Boudreau's career coaching record, you put it this way, the guy's coached about 1,000 games. He's got 300 more wins than he does losses. That's a big deal. This guy's a great coach. He's a Stanley Cup champion coach. And the Canucks treated him very poorly.
Like shit.
And I love talking shit about the Vancouver Canucks, but I'll try to remove my bias and even be objective. I mean, they were talking. Everybody knew that Bruce Boudreau was going to be fired for like the last 2 weeks.
It was horrible.
But they didn't let him go.
I've never seen a coach treated in that way. Usually you get the smell of they're going to get let go, and then it's 3 to 7 days. This went on for like 2 weeks.
Well, and you can also let a coach
go.
You can name an interim head coach.
Yeah,
you can have an assistant coach step in, but they didn't. They left him there swinging, taking questions from the media after every practice. What's this guy supposed to do? What's this guy supposed to say? And so finally, before his last game Saturday against the phenomenally talented Edmonton Oilers, Bruce Boudreau basically says to reporters, I don't even know why I'm still here. He says that before the game. And so the Nucks go out, and then they're committed to winning, and ultimately they didn't. They couldn't. It's kind of been the story of their past couple of seasons. And we wanted to show you this video if you haven't seen it already. So this is Bruce Boudreau after the game. The Canucks lose, and it's starting to hit him. You want to roll it, Johnny?
In a season that's been full of turmoil, it's hard to imagine we will forget the chance of Bruce. There it is anytime soon. And there is an emotional Bruce Boudreau behind the Canucks bench.
Yeah, and he's taking it in right now. Thanking the fans. Very emotional heading down the tunnel. A lot of times the coaches will storm down that tunnel after a game like this.
Look at that.
Which is beautiful. A big shout out to my buddy, Tom Fleming, who, I went and tried out to be the Canucks DJ when I was out in Kelowna. Came in second to my buddy, DJ Tom Fleming, Red Bull 3-style champion. He's the guy who actually played.
Can I talk about Bruce Boudreau?
Yep.
I'm just joking.
Go ahead.
I'm like Tom Fleming. I want to talk about Bruce Boudreau.
Well, he actually played Whoop There It Is for the first time. And
Is that right?
Yeah, after a big game. Well, in the third period of a big game, I think it was his first game where they were like making a change, and everyone started chanting, Bruce, there it is. And it just became this huge thing.
You've watched a lot of sports games. When's the last time that you saw a fan base, like when a coach is getting set to get fired, the fan position is typically, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
100%.
Fans are pissed that they're paying $300 a ticket, that their team's going to miss the playoffs again, but they're not quite bad enough to maybe get Connor Bedard, right? So they're not losing enough, right? When's the last time you saw fans holding up signs? We love you, Bruce. I'm with you, Bruce. I stand with you, Bruce. Unbelievable. And the damage done to the Canucks' reputation in this situation.
I mean, and a lot of us don't like the Canucks, but this is just franchise. This is the worst thing I've ever seen from a franchise. And like you said, how many Edmonton Oilers coaches have we seen where they just get booed?
Sure.
Jerseys on the ice. Get the fuck out of here.
Fans are calling for coaches' heads all the time, and that was not the case in Vancouver. I mean, the guy's got a special sauce.
I think people would rather see upper management go and him stay.
Well, and people are questioning the wisdom of upper management here, including another Stanley Cup champion, Jim Rutherford, who's running this team. What the hell is he doing? And people had questions for them as they announced Rick Tocchet as their new coach.
Which is
just over the weekend. Let's get into that in just a second. But I want to ask, Charles Adler has spent a lot of his time in the city of Vancouver. And, of course, we're lucky enough to have Chuck join us every Monday here on the show. And he shows up wearing his Winnipeg Jets lid. I love it. Hey, man, how are you?
You're talking Bruce Boudreau has Manitoba roots. I'm in Manitoba. Nobody doubts in Manitoba that I'm a huge fan of the Winnipeg Jets. I used to be part of the broadcast crew, and I love Rick Bowness and Mike Chipman and everyone who's associated with the Jets. But boy, I tell you, I've got to say this on the morning after the Boudreau massacre, that if there's any way, Bruce, any way that you can get this into your eyeballs, and Mr. Chipman, owner of the Winnipeg Jets, if there's any way that you guys can break bread, and I will help you, okay? I'll buy the bread. I'll buy whatever it takes. I would love to get Bruce Boudreau to be part of our Winnipeg Jets family.
Yeah, he said, he goes, I don't know if, like, he sounds like he still wants to come. Obviously, it's a little early, right? Like when something like you get unceremoniously fired and you're mistreated and it's kind of a weird time, but sometimes NHL coaches can pop up somewhere else quick. I've never seen somebody like an esteemed professional disrespected like that, and the fan base standing up in defense of him. It was really remarkable. It was like the one time in the last 20 years that I've actually gone, way to go, Canucks fans, way to go.
Yeah, I don't understand Rutherford, Jim Rutherford, who's got his pedigree just as Bruce Bennett. I mean, did you see Rutherford yesterday with that bizarre apology where he said that the whole problem here, and he's really it's unfortunate how Bruce has been treated in the last little while, but it's all about honesty. That Jim Rutherford said he was too honest. He's been too honest about the team and the problems with the team, and it's his honesty that has caused the problem. And so from now on, he'll zip it. And I'm thinking, oh my God! I mean, Jim Rutherford was giving the worst of politicians in Canada and the United States he was giving them a good name. That was the worst thing. What's your HR take on Jim Rutherford, who is a respected guy?
Yeah.
Okay? What's your take on Jim Rutherford's so-called apology to Bruce?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this starts with the owner, Chuck. Like, I don't know if, I just think that there's a real culture problem there. They're about to lose. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, I know that we're not a sports podcast necessarily, but the real talk, real life, people do care about this stuff. Like Bo Horvat, the Canucks captain, they didn't sign him last off season. They signed JT Miller. They didn't have the money for Horvat, and now they're in trouble because he's going to walk in a 40-goal season, and it's just a mess. If I was a Canucks fan, I'd be pulling my hair out.
Well, I don't see this as a sports thing. This is a human thing, and over the years, various corporations have let go of certain talented people.
Oh, is that right? Do you know some people that have been fired from prominent jobs, Charles?
Not that you and I know anything about that.
Wow, what was that like for them?
But how you let go of somebody shows whether or not you're a human being.
Yeah.
And as he said just a few moments ago, when it was obvious to everyone, I mean, Bruce, I guess, was the last guy to find out, which was clearly indecent and classless. But when it was obvious that Bruce was going, just put an interim coach in. And by the way, for those people who think, oh, that's going to cost a lot of money, that didn't cost any money. You got several members of management of the Vancouver Canucks. You just tell one of the fellas, you are also now the interim coach. There's no extra money to be spent. And Bruce Boudreau gets something that's a lot more dignified than what they did to him in the last little while. I mean, leaving him publicly on the rack. And yes, I love sports, and part of this is a sports conversation, but I see it as a human conversation. This is not the way we treat people in 2023. The Vancouver Canucks have basically done a clinic in the last couple of weeks on how people should be treated in the 1770s.
Yeah. We've got people in live chat that are making a fair point, and it's an equal opportunity show. We want to make sure that if we're going to rip one NHL franchise, we'll rip several. Sure. And Tracy says maybe the Calgary Flames should fire Daryl Sutter. That's never happening. Well, not never. Never say never.
Never.
It's not happening right now. That guy's got the key to the city.
You don't fire a Sutter in Alberta.
That's right. And if you do, then you
I may be wearing a Winnipeg Jets hat.
Then you bring him back. Yeah. But did you see what he said about
I've had enough beer in Alberta to know that Albertans would burn the Saddle Dome down if they fired the.
You're 100% right. But did you hear what he said about Jacob Pelche? This is pretty brutal. Did you see this, Johnny? So the kid makes his rookie debut. He's like 21 years old, right? He's a first rounder for the Flames a few years ago, and he basically gets 7 minutes of ice time, which is not a lot in his first game. 0 points, 1 hit, 1 shot, and the media after the game asks the head coach Daryl Sutter, "What did you think of Jacob Pelche's rookie debut? What did you think of his first game?" And Sutter says, "What number is he?" Like, dunks on his own rookie, which I thought was kind of weird, although Sutter's dunked on his own all-stars before.
Sutter can look. Sutter is one of the people in this guy. It's not that I'm in love with the Sutter family, although I guess I am. But putting aside how I feel about the Sutters and Sutter heritage, Sutter is one of the few people in this country, and this is why I want to celebrate what he does, even when he says something like that. He's one of the few people in this country who genuinely has the freedom, Ryan, to say anything he wants. Mm-hmm. There's never a doubt that when Daryl Sutter speaks, you're getting the real Daryl Sutter. He's not doing PR. He hasn't been to HR seminars. He isn't worried about being politically correct. He doesn't do things like, well, if somebody was offended, blah, 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 I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm too honest a person. My point is Daryl Sutter and the Sutter family, they're not phonies, okay? And for that, I too would probably assist people in wanting to burn the Saddle Dome down if they fired Daryl Sutter.
Well, everybody in Calgary wants to burn the Saddle Dome down for very
okay, but that's putting aside
easier,
the fact that
it's easier to get
in Calgary. Old barns aren't supposed to stay up, whether they're old barns, old hospitals, old hockey arenas, whatever. I mean,
blow them up.
I get that too about Calgary culture.
Yeah, blow them up. Duane Bratt, we talked to him out of the gates on the show this morning. He says he was a little disappointed that he wasn't actually riding tandem with you, which would be kind of fun. Maybe we'll put the two of you together in future.
Anytime.
He's very, and I know that the Real Talk audience will be as well, curious curious for your take on what's transpired over the past number of days. A CBC exclusive report, Megan Grant, Elise Von Schiele doing a great job. I think it was last Thursday, trying to figure out what actually happened. Premier Danielle Smith first told Rebel News that she did contact Crown prosecutors about charges stemming from the Coutts border blockade. Then she says she absolutely didn't. And then she says that she's commissioned an independent inquiry that's going to need a number of days to go through emails from, what could involve, 450 people, including prosecutors and political staffers. How are you wrapping your mind around the story? What are the big takeaways?
Well, I don't think she personally talked to prosecutors. I think that she had someone talk to them. I think whoever did talk to them might be able to cover their tracks. I think there's this big thing about email. If they do a forensic email thing, I don't know if they're going into the server. I don't know whether the server was wiped. I don't know whether it was a phone call. I don't know whether it was a personal chat, whether it was a personal email. But bottom line, whether or not the investigation comes up with the smoking gun email or the smoking gun voicemail, I don't believe in all that nonsense. Somebody working in Danielle Smith's coterie, okay, someone in her barn, as it were, okay, one of the people in her barn definitely contacted prosecutors or a prosecutor. It's not in the interest of that prosecutor to come forward. It's not in the interest of that staffer to come forward. But I, as someone who just told you how much I admire Daryl Sutter because he's the real deal, I'm not going to be a phony deal and twist myself into 1,000 different things that only a contortionist at Cirque du Soleil can do. Danielle Smith wanted the prosecutors to back the hell off, and she had a way of doing that. And guess what? Bottom line, they did back off. They did.
How do you know that?
There's no one being prosecuted.
Well, they've had charges dropped in a couple circumstances, but there are also there's actually another storyline here that deserves attention and coverage. And now I don't have enough of the details to have a strong take yet on this, but one of the men charged in this alleges that he hasn't seen any progress on his case. As a matter of fact, he says he hasn't spoken to legal representation and he's been jailed for 11 months. Now, it could be that guy is refusing to speak with legal representation, but I do think there's a lot of people right now that are impacted by what appears to be the wheels turning rather slowly on this. And whether you agree or disagree with the perspective that these people have or the position they took or the fact that they jammed up the border, I do think that is something that should concern everybody.
I think there was a lot of illegal stuff being done. I think that cops were under attack. I think that cops were threatened. Cops, I don't care whether they're called, if she wants to create her own Alberta police force, doesn't matter to me. Anyone who serves, whether they're serving in Alberta, they're serving in Manitoba, anyone who's serving in Canada in a military uniform or a local police uniform, they represent us, okay? And when people want to threaten those folks, they want to attack those folks, some want to threaten to kill those folks, they belong in goddamn prison. And any premier, I don't care whether they're called conservative, whether they're called Wild Rose, whether they're called Maverick, whatever the fringe group is, anyone in this country who is part of this democracy, who wants to enable or assist in any way the freedom for people who threaten our cops, I'm sorry. There are people who watching this over the last couple of years on social media, they've got this impression that I'm some soft liberal or soft NDP or soft anything. I am not soft on crime and punishment, and I'm not soft on people who threaten our cops. And anyone who wants to position themselves as a conservative that wants prosecutors to back off on the prosecution of people who threaten our police officers, I'm sorry, it's out of line.
Yeah,
it's out of bounds.
I mean, everybody picks and chooses where they want to apply their political convictions. There's hypocrisy all around us, and that's why I appreciate conversations like this where we can call it out regardless of where it lies on the political spectrum. For people that are paying attention or that maybe have kind of forgotten, because we understand the news cycle moves fast, June of this year, there is a trial scheduled before judge and jury for 4 men that are charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Obviously an extremely serious charge at the Coutts blockade. They've elected to be tried before judge and jury. That's Chris Carbert, Chris Lysak, Anthony Oleniuk, and Jerry Morin that were charged in February, about 11 months ago, after RCMP found guns, body armor, and ammo in trailers at that protest near Coutts. And, of course, that's a story that we'll continue to follow. Another video posted by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. He is a master of his message. Every video gets hundreds of thousands of views, but I saw you clap back at it, and I want to know why. He's at an airport. I don't know if it's Pearson, but he's got his earbuds in, and he's doing one of his sort of Rick Mercer. I know I shouldn't say that because they're very different, but he's kind of making these one of his signature things. And he doesn't need the media to have 3 minutes of uninterrupted rant for his followers and supporters across the country. Before we get into this, here's a portion so people know what we're talking about.
You want people to be afraid so that they forget that this is the chaos. This is the chaos we have at our airports. By the way, Justin, I'm able to record this message right now because my flight is late. Of course it's late. Flights are always late since you became Prime Minister. The federal government is responsible for air transportation. Yes, that's you, my friend. And you don't want people to remember that you have failed in all of these areas. So you divide to distract. Well, we're not going to let you do that anymore. We're going to point out that these failings are your failings. They're not the failings of the Canadian people. In fact, the Canadian people want us to turn the hurt you've caused into the hope that they need. And that is what I am going to do. We're going to make this a country that rewards work again, where the dollar has purchasing power, where planes actually take off on time, and where our streets are safe. That is the hope that is going to unify us, and unity is what we need. Instead of your divide and distract, we will unite for hope. Now, I got a plane to catch.
I mean, I don't actually think he has a plane to catch. I think the whole reason he's able to do that is because his flight's late, but I digress. What jumped out at you about the video?
Okay, so here it is. This is just television 101. This is not a political opinion. This is about the human condition, no matter where people are watching television around the world. When you're a TV producer, you want the visual to be as attractive as possible, because I want people to listen to this very carefully. Television 101. People listen with their eyes. Got it? They listen with their eyes. So if their eyes don't find something attractive, they don't actually hear the message. So for those people who think that I've got this bird in my saddle for Poilievre and I hate Poilievre, my major problem with Pierre Poilievre is that he doesn't do what would be most effective for the Conservatives to be most competitive in the parts of Canada they need to be competitive in. I want democracy to be competitive. And the Conservatives happen to me, my old home, okay? Yes, I've been orphaned by some of the modern-day Conservatives. That doesn't mean I become a Liberal. It doesn't mean I become an NDPer. I want the Conservatives to be a smarter, more intelligent party. Now, digital media matters. If digital media didn't matter, Ryan Jesperson and I wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So since people listen with their eyes, why give them that lingering, tight close-up, not for 10 seconds or 20 seconds, but for 3 goddamn minutes? That's Bush League. That is not how Pierre Poilievre should be shot. Now, he may not understand that because he may not understand enough about television, but certainly the Conservative Party has enough dough to hire professional television people, and there are professional TV campaigns they could look at, whether they're coming from the Republican Party, whether they're coming from the Democratic Party, whether they're coming from old conservative ads and liberal ads. It's not difficult to figure out how to do a campaign ad. All of these things are campaigns. It's campaign day every day. And making your leader look like, and I know that people want to take shots at how I say things because they find them to be too violent. But I'm sorry, there is no politically correct filter in the human mind. When you make your political leader someone you want to position as the next prime minister of this country, and you've got the close-up for minutes on those cold eyes, those Arctic cold eyes, what you're doing is making him look like a stalker who's shopping for a hammer. That's what they're making the leader look like. And so my objection isn't about Pierre Poilievre. My objection is how he's being framed, how he's being positioned, and really how they're turning him into something that I would call room service for Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau.
It reminds me of those weird Rogers ads where Mark Messier kept calling Connor McDavid. And it was like, you got to leave Connor alone, man. It was like, hey, Connor. Hey, Connor. It's like, hey, Justin. Hey, Justin. It's just kind of a weird campaign.
It's creepy.
But it's
creepy.
playing with
I mean,
the base, and people love it,
and
and it gets hundreds of thousands of views. So,
yeah,
I mean,
but it's creepy. And the thing is that no matter, and some women want to say, Chuck, don't speak for women. I'm not speaking for women. I'm speaking as a person who's a media professional, okay? And the people who are most turned off by those kinds of what we're talking about here, okay, the stalker stereotype, that's what Pierre Poilievre. I'm not saying he's a stalker. I'm saying he looks like a damn stalker. Okay, so the number one people who are turned off by that are women, and the conservatives need women. The conservatives don't need to turn off women, and I don't know what it'll take to convince both Pierre Poilievre and the people around him that that's something he has to take seriously. So he may enjoy watching these things, and he may say, hey, I'm as good as Rick Mercer and blah, 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 blah. I'm just telling you, it's damaging the conservative brand every day that people are exposed to that, and it's helping other people who want to create ads about the conservatives. If you want to create an ad today making the conservatives look scary, all you've got to do is take the material they're giving you.
Let me ask you this in closing. It's a personal question. It's been a long time since you and I were able to break bread in person. I remember the last time that we did. It was in Toronto, and we had a few beers. We had like I think at least 3. I might have even had 4. You know, we
weren't driving. Folks.
We were walking back to our hotel. Hell, I may have had 5, Charles. I don't know. On the average week, how many drinks would you have in an average week? Health Canada says that Canadians should endeavor to have 2 or fewer drinks per week. Now, what about you?
I actually go many weeks where I don't drink at all. You know, I talk about drinking much more than I actually do drink. What's the expression? All hat, no cattle.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I don't. I drink at Christmas time. I drink at parties, but. Am I spending a whole lot of time here in this? You can tell I've got too hot. And by the way, went out of my way. Once again, I'm kind of like Danielle Smith here. I didn't do this, but I had people who work with me or for me, whatever you want to call it. I had people with me who I'm supposed to hit the like button. I don't know where the like button is.
Yeah, Johnny put that up. So if you like what you're hearing, if you think that you have a particularly strong take on the show today, Chuck, just hit the like button on the YouTube.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
All right.
No,
okay.
That's everybody's seeing that, not just you.
Okay,
yeah, we want to
sorry.
hit like, subscribe, share. You know, you got to say
that
this is the new era, man. This is the new era. You know,
okay.
This is the new age.
I don't have cold eyes.
But you were telling us about your production value, and Johnny and I were both playing it cool. I hadn't mentioned it. I was going to mention it in the extra. I was going to mention it. We said goodbye, and everybody's noticing.
You see what's behind me. You see what's behind me.
I see.
And this is for you, my friend. Okay.
This is a nice flex.
I had staff spend several days, okay, going through various storage lockers to find the Emmy, okay, and so here it is, and I've made sure to put it behind me. I also got some great artwork behind me, and I appreciate that, and some good people have helped me get into some new digs.
There
and
you
I'm
go.
Now in BC. In BC, of course, I had the pleasure of spending a lot of time by the ocean and had some great oceanfront views. And of course, the prairies that's my natural home. Most of my adult life has been on the prairie, whether it's in Alberta or in Manitoba. And I'm in Manitoba right now. And I've got what I tell my BC friends, I've got an ocean view from my new place. I can see the Walmart from here. And it's a great place to be. I've also got the bank next door to me. With some of my dough. I think they've also got the $250,000 that's going to go to Preston Manning. By the way, that'd be a great, you were saying earlier, he's Preston freaking Manning. Don't you think that'd be a great Twitter handle for the modern day Pastor Preston?
I do
Preston freaking Manning.
Preston freaking Manning. I think that would be great.
And by the way, Preston Manning over the years, just to be fair, he has been a great inspiration to many of the people who have listened to my shows in different parts of the country, but especially in the prairie. And Preston Manning, I've got to say, was one of the best guests, and this is why sometimes people get pissed off with my feelings about Danielle Smith, because my personal feelings about her are very positive. All my personal contacts with her have been terrific, and my personal contacts with Preston were terrific. He did many of my shows, and my listeners were crazy about him. So I don't know if they're crazy about the fact that he's getting, $250,000 to sort of cut and paste his old coloring book on COVID nonsense. That's a whole different Preston. Never thought I'd see Preston doing that. But in general, I've got to say that he's an elder statesman in this country. Preston Manning is a great Canadian, and even though I will crap on some of what he may now be doing, I have nothing but respect for the human being who I affectionately call Pastor Preston.
There you go. Yeah, I went to school with two of his boys and played basketball and volleyball with them and would call them dear friends to this day. So, but hey, personal and political, are oftentimes two different avenues when you host talk shows, and so that's the way it is. We'll talk to you again next Monday, my man. Emmy's looking good there on the shelf. Thanks for doing the show.
And by the way, you were earlier talking about having your socks knocked off. Nobody knocks my socks off.
Oh, jeez.
Like real talker, Ryan Jesperson.
Okay, there you go. We got our new billboard. That's Emmy Award-winning talk legend Charles Adler. Wow. He's got a new setup there.
It looks good.
Go through storage rooms to find his Emmy. If I had an Emmy, it would not be in a storage locker. I think I'd be bringing that thing with me to lunch dates. Can we get personal and do 2 drinks a week? How many fewer drinks a week? No, that's too personal of a question. But what were your thoughts
on 2 drinks a week
when Health Canada announced that Canadians should endeavor to consume 2 or fewer drinks per week?
I don't know what's going on. A couple years ago they told us have a glass of wine every day.
It's good for your heart.
It's good for your heart. And now they're like, stop. But hey, crack is legal.
Did you see this? So I wanted to show this because this is hilarious. This is a story. This is out of the Telegraph, right, in the UK. Okay, so this is a British publication, and the headline it's hilarious. And the headline, but I don't think they're trying to be funny, but they're trying to be biting for sure. That there is legislation happening in BC. There's legislation coming into effect where they've decriminalized virtually all drugs, the so-called hard drugs, people call them. And so the headline reads, Canadians told to have 2 drinks a week as crack is decriminalized. And then the subhead reads, Justin Trudeau introduced some of the strictest guidelines on alcohol in the West ahead of the decriminalization of certain Class A drugs. Now, that's a bit misleading. Obviously, the Prime Minister can't tell you how much alcohol to drink or not to drink. And it's not really Justin Trudeau, it's Health Canada. And so there's flaws in the reporting, but the conversation's an interesting one. And I was talking to a buddy about this, and he's a pretty candid guy. And I said, so what do you think about 2 drinks a week? And he's like, buddy, I've had 2 drinks by like Monday at quitting time.
I want to know when the government's going to tell us how much crack to have a week, because I really need to know my limits for that. So
you should know your limits on that. And I get that people are going to say, listen, you guys shouldn't be joking about this. Alcohol's a real problem, for that matter. Crack and cocaine and other drugs are a real problem, and it's not a laughing matter. And sure, and it is real life. And sometimes people joke about this type of stuff. But obviously, alcohol consumption is an issue, and obviously, it's not good for you, and we all know that. So it's an interesting story to follow. I'd be curious to pick your brains on this, and it will be the theme of this week's edition of Positive Reflections, which is coming up in just a second. But first, I wanted to talk. We mentioned this tweet from Roman Baber. So you'll remember him. He wanted to be the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. He was one of those that was in contention against Pierre Poilievre and all the others. Jean Charest was kind of the other headliner, and then there Dr. Leslyn Lewis and Roman Baber and Scott Aitchison, and you remember this. And Baber he was like the other right winger. Right? He was sort of like, I guess he wanted to eat a bit of Pierre Poilievre's lunch, but he just couldn't quite get there. And he's not as compelling a personality. He didn't have the same team. He didn't raise nearly the same amount of money. He couldn't get the same high-profile interviews. He just, even to be super shallow, he just doesn't look like a leader. Sorry. Like, people care about that stuff. He just doesn't have leadership qualities. But over the weekend, he took a strong stance on, gas stoves and 2 drinks a week and everything else when he posted this tweet. And obviously, a lot of conservatives, a lot of in particular right-wing conservatives, appear to be latching onto it because it's getting a lot of attention. And this is what you might call virtue signaling. This is what you might call something to do with the culture wars, but a hilarious tweet from Roman Baber, and you can check it out on if you follow me on Twitter, and if you go to my homepage, or whatever you call it. Do you call it a homepage on Twitter, John? You go there.
I hate when people call it a website. I'm like, isn't it an app? Like, it's not a site.
But it's so funny because he sits there and he posts this just the other night, and he wants people to leave him alone, and I'm pretty sure that everybody was leaving him alone, but he says, me and the lady, by the way, me and the lady will drive my V6 Jeep. So I guess that's him saying that he doesn't have an EV. I think that's so. Count the signals. Count the virtue signals in the tweet. Me and the lady will drive my V6 Jeep to the store that still gives out plastic bags. Then drink alcohol while cooking red meat on her gas stove. We're not bothering you. Don't bother us. # leave us alone.
Leave me and my lady alone.
Leave me and the lady.
It's funny you bring that up because my wife, like I always say the wife or my wife, and it's my wife always says my partner when she talks about me. And it's something I've been trying to change.
Interesting.
I always I listen back to the show and I'm like, I should say my partner because it's a thing she likes to do, right?
Yeah.
I think it's becoming like in the past where we say the lady or the wife or whatever, right?
Well, it's like the old school when guys are like, the old lady.
Or
the old
the ball and chain.
The old ball and chain. The old lady says I can't make it to bowling, boys.
But if Jatinder's listening, I'm making an attempt to say my partner more. Because I feel so respected when she's like I hear her say it sometimes on the phone. Well, me and my partner will be there at this time, and I'm like, wow. I'm her partner. I'm the equal. I'm great.
And it kind of feels like, and it kind of
feels good.
Infuses this energy. You're like, we're partners.
Yeah.
We're doing
we're
this
in this together. Yeah.
Yeah. We're wife, hubby, husband. Maybe it feels a little bit more kind of like, does it feel like property? Is that what you're saying? Or are we just a bunch of snowflakes? You'll see that if you want to read the comments on Baber's tweet, the word snowflake pops up a lot. But I just think it's so funny. So like number one, okay, you're going to drive your V6 Jeep, fine. First of all, as I clap back in my and I'm just having fun with this. But like I said, here on the prairies, we don't brag about cylinders unless we've got at least 8. I can't remember the last time a buddy bragged about a V6. Second of all, plastic bags. Like plastic's a problem, man.
It's a huge problem.
We all need plastic, but like
we also,
I'm going to go to the okay, Baber. Yeah. So you get your plastic bags. Then we're going to drink alcohol while cooking red meat on her gas stove. And then the picture, of course, is just a coffee carafe.
Why do they get so embedded? Why do people get so hopped up? Like, you can't make a little change, have less plastic, less alcohol. You got to go like full throttle.
Because the government's telling them to do it, John.
Yeah. The government will not tell me. I'm going to drink alcohol out of a plastic bag and then burn it on my stove, which is gas.
And I'm going to breathe it all in. It's like, man, this is really, really bad for you.
Before you get to positive, did you want to mention this tweet going back to Boudreau? Because I know you wanted to talk about Boudreau.
Well, I do. I'm happy to talk about it because I actually think that I think the tweet's out of line.
Yeah.
I think it's ridiculous. But yeah, sure, let's get into it. So this is Ian Kennedy, writes for the Hockey News. Ian's, Ian does some really great work, and Ian's also a bit of a wet blanket. And he tweets, for the record, so Rick Tocchet, the new head coach of the Vancouver Canucks.
Replacing Bruce
Boudreau. He's a legend in the National Hockey League. He's tough as hell. He scored a lot of goals. Rick Tocchet has a lot of respect in the hockey community. He has sat on the TNT panel with Paul Bissonnette, Wayne Gretzky, and those guys, for quite some time. And so Ian brings up, everybody knows also, like Rick Tocchet kind of took a bullet for some other high-profile people, including, if I can say it, the great one's partner. Partner. Janet Gretzky.
People are loving the partner.
Are they? I don't even have the live chat open right now. No offense, love you guys, but so there was that kind of gambling ring, and we have to think now. Attitudes about gambling were a little bit different 20 years ago. But Ian Kennedy tweets today, for the record, Rick Tocchet was arrested and guilty for his role in an illegal gambling ring in 2007. He was also arrested and guilty in 2011, making a false declaration while taking more than $18,000 in cash across a border. There had to be other candidates, right? Asks Ian Kennedy. Your thoughts? I didn't want to, on purpose, I'd like to pull back the curtain, let real talkers know you and I sometimes do not talk about an issue before we do the show because we don't know.
Well, I don't know too much about the the ins and outs of exactly what happened. I know there
It was a bunch of rich people,
tons of people involved
that were putting money on games. None of them were working for the teams. And that's not to listen. It broke the law, so it did break
was
the
illegal.
law. Period. It was illegal.
Yeah,
like he wasn't like O.J. Simpson. He wasn't like I think there's varying degrees of things. I also personally believe that when somebody does their time, they do their time. They've paid their debt to
100%.
society. And I also can't ignore the fact that there's gambling ads on every...
I was just going to say that.
Okay.
So I was just going to say that now, like, look at how loose we are with gambling. It's during the game. Everyone's involved. Wayne Gretzky's on ads for...
Yeah, MGM.
Yeah. So I think if he served his time, if he did what was necessary to correct himself, and now... Obviously, our thoughts and feelings have changed on gambling in sports, right?
Yeah, or at least some of ours. Mine, I don't
Some
really
people
care.
are still
I
against it, but
I think, and listen, I think like you've got to be careful that gambling's not polluting the sport in the sense of
Very
like
careful.
games are being thrown and things like that. Obviously, you know, Pete Rose and the Chicago Black Sox and blah 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 blah. And I'm not writing that off. That is legitimate, but like everybody's gambling these days. I recognize it's not for everybody. I recognize that some people's lives have been destroyed by gambling, but it's legal, and Tocchet paid his dues, and like not properly declaring over $18,000. 18,000? Like, do you mean 18 million? No, 18,000. Okay. Yeah. And like not properly declaring. So what is it? You got to declare more than 10 grand. He probably won it in Vegas. Didn't, you know, like, I just sort of think like it's just a weird thing for Kennedy to dig his heels in on.
Yeah.
It's like even the most recent stories from 12 years ago, it just seemed weird.
But gambling, it can rub people the wrong way. I still see people tweeting during the Oilers games being like, get this gambling off the screen.
Yeah.
But then there's 3 commercials for booze in between those. And it's like, I just think the only thing I'm scared of is there should be more ways to regulate your gambling on the apps, because I've used a bunch. Obviously, we use them with the Hedge.
Yeah.
To just kind of make timers or like maybe have notifications come up and be like, hey, you're betting more than you usually do kind of thing, right? Because I think people can get, especially when you're watching a game, you have a couple drinks, you go back on the app, it could get a little out of hand.
Hey, we got some real talk right now from Allison in our live chat. I really appreciate her sharing this. Listen, and let me also say, I'll make you a commitment, Allison, and real talkers. Like, I want to show up, and I won't speak for Johnny, but I want to show up to every single show willing to change my mind. And
sure.
I hope that's the spirit of our conversations. Allison says, as somebody who's a recovering gambling addict, it's high time we regulate gambling ads. She said, it makes me really angry. She said, they're not advertising to the average person. They're trying to get the people like me who are not able to control it. I really appreciate you sharing that. Justin says, judging past actions based on the sentiments of the day is dangerous. He says, and he said, and I also wouldn't say gambling's more accepted. It's online, and it skirts the traditional definitions of games of chance. Okay. I mean, Fish Fan makes a point, just a hockey point, says the Canucks could have brought in a better coach. Like, Tocchet's coaching record is subpar at best. That is true. That's true. Anyway, Chad says, imagine ads for opioids. Well, like, I mean, gosh,
we're getting into a big
we
area
are getting
here.
into it. Maybe we should get into it.
We need more time for this.
Put it this way. Like, you can advertise alcohol anywhere you want. Like, anywhere you want. Music festivals, sports games, like wherever. Alcohol's everywhere. You know that. You can't advertise tobacco anywhere. Like, Vancouver used to have the Benson and Hedges Symphony of Fireworks or whatever it was called. It was like, you know, fabulous. And like, I guess everyone was like firing up Benson and Hedges while they were watching. I don't know. But, you know, but what about prescription meds? Like, I'm always blown away by the commercials if it's like, you know, I'm making up a name. It's like Sindula. And it's like, and it just shows people like having a campfire and like playing bocce ball, and it's like Sindula. And then they're laughing and swimming and splashing. And then it's like, ask your doctor about Sindula. And then you're like, what even is this? And then at the end, it's like, Sindula may cause your hair to fall out. It may also cause your liver to failure.
You will never have a job.
You'll never have a job, and you're going to lose everything. But Sindula. And it is like, you can advertise all kinds of things.
Yeah.
You can't advertise cannabis anywhere. Anytime you see a cannabis company advertising, it's illegal. Some of them will do it, just pay the fine. I've seen it advertised at music festivals as an example. They'll just pay the fine.
And I had gambling in my family. My father was a gambler, and it was a horrible thing, too.
Is that right?
But my general thing is, like, people got to be responsible for themselves these days. But I wouldn't mind, like, if you're going to not have cigarette ads and you don't want gambling ads, let's just get rid of all the ads. The booze ads, like, let's just make it uniform for...
Sure.
You know what I mean?
But
Which
boy,
is never
how
going to happen.
It's
so,
never going to to happen. Like, we don't have, I mean, we're saying this as we're about to release the Real Talk bourbon. So you're about to hear some bourbon ads. Like, I don't mean like in 30 seconds from now, but hey, straight up Real Talk. Like, we're thrilled that we've partnered with the distillery, and we're going to be releasing a maple bourbon in a couple weeks, and our Patreon supporters will have first access to that. But so I'm not going to sit here and say that, like, clutch pearls and say whatever. I think all of this should be, I mean, imagine the revenue that conventional broadcasters see from, I mean, imagine the Super Bowl's coming up on February 12th, and I'm going to tell you where I'm going to be hosting a Super Bowl party too. But imagine, I mean, Budweiser and all these other brands. I mean, if you were to say, well, you can't advertise booze anymore, I can think of some broadcast titans that would be pissed. But it's like, what do we care about? What are our priorities?
It's hard. And I do recognize, like, all these things are problems for people. Tobacco, gambling, alcohol, drugs, all these things lead to addiction, right? But I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, right? Because other people make money off it. I'm not talking about just big corporations. People have jobs. People have families that are related to the income from these companies.
Well, and there are people that brew beer that do amazing work, and then that you can have a beer and enjoy it, and it's wonderful. And
a beer or two is fine.
Brewing started with the monks,
right? Is not so good for you.
Yeah, 10 beers not great for you. Allison follows up, says, yeah, capitalism would never. Chad, vices are where the dollars are. It's true. Tracy says cannabis is a great example of carefully thought out regulation. Says we'll need advertising. Can't get rid of it as some is needed to gather clients and customers. Yeah, I don't know about cannabis. The legal cannabis market is struggling. It's in trouble.
I agree with her. Like, I like how they did it. Like, everything is very, like, when you go in, it seems safer than all those other vices.
Yeah,
everything is packaged properly, sealed. Like, I go in there and I obviously look of age, and I always get ID'd. Like, so I feel like they did better than the other ones.
And then there's really dumb stuff, and I'm not going to get on my soapbox here. Well, I will, but just for like 10 seconds. But for those of you that are also cigar enthusiasts, one of the really sort of like wonderful things about the cigar culture is the art on the bands. The paper that wraps around the cigar. And cigar manufacturers, everybody knows, like, in so many ways, as you know, that when I say Veuve Clicquot, you know what that bottle looks like.
Yeah.
When I say Cohiba, you know what that cigar looks like. In Canada now, Health Canada is requiring cigar manufacturers to cover up their bands with, like, basic gray paper. Why? Because kids are getting into humidors and they're attracted by the label of the band to the. So I think that's ridiculous. I actually think that's something that I've sort of had comments on before in past. I also recognize that of mountains and molehills, this is a molehill. This is arguably a mosquito's tent in front of a molehill. And if it saves some lives, and if we want to meaningfully address things like lung cancer or start conversations about changing attitudes and behaviors, then maybe it is a step in the right direction, and maybe I could be stood to be proven wrong. Ken wonders, is there anything more harmful to our society than social media addiction? He says, unless we educate kids better on addiction in general and how our brains work, we're not going to legislate addiction out of society.
100%. I think just teaching people for all these things, even food can get out of control, eating too much, like just moderation, and as well, like showing people like just how to use things properly, and also just putting more money into addiction services. So when people do go down the road and get lost, they have lots of help, and it doesn't cost, well, I would like it all to be free, but it doesn't cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah, love it. That said, positive reflections this week, we're going to have a laugh. There's a guy in St. Catharines, Ontario, that is not necessarily keen on the new Health Canada regulations. That's coming up in 60 seconds. Before we get there, I want to let you know, if all this talk about bettering ourselves is reminding you that you have a plan this year to either go back to school, or maybe you're thinking about going back to school, or maybe you're not even, maybe you're just going, gosh, it would be great if I could go back to school, but there's no way I can make the class schedule. There's no way. How am I going to? I don't have a car. I'm going to park at the university. That's going to cost so much. Plus, I got kids, and then you're caring for your aging parent. And hey, Athabasca University has world-class accredited online programs and courses that give you the flexibility to learn at your own pace on a schedule that suits your lifestyle. Take your education to the next level. It is Canada's AU, anyone, anywhere, anytime open university for advanced learning. There is no better time than right now to take that degree or master's program. You can go to athabascau.ca for more information. You know they have 35 online master's and doctorate programs, and the only commute is to your device. How great is that? You can find them under the sponsors tab on our website. Also, a big shout out to our friends at Friesen Brothers. Alberta grown, Alberta owned. My friends, we are, 11 days away from the 1st of February. You know what that means. 15% off grocery purchases of $75 or more. And don't forget, you can check out their Family Solutions flyer. If you go to Friesen.com, that's Freson, the Family Essentials flyer. This is a great resource for families that are looking for quality food for low prices. This business started owned by family, still is, back in 1955, always focused on great food around the family dinner table. That's our friends at Friesen Brothers. Well, thanks to the team at Kuby Energy, every single Monday we kick off our week with something that's going to encourage you, something that's going to, we hope, brighten your day. And sometimes it's a random act of kindness, and sometimes it's a story of somebody paying it forward. Sometimes it's a video of starlings flying together and creating these beautiful patterns. You get the idea. It's something outside of the news cycle for the most part. Now, this one is a bit of an exception, because I want to actually bring you an interview that ran on CHCH TV in St. Catharines, Ontario. This is called a streeter, where a reporter goes out and starts to talk to people on, the street. The average, John and Jill Q public. How do folks feel about what's happening in the halls of power? And so they find this guy outside a liquor store in St. Catharines, Ontario, and they ask him what he makes of Health Canada recommendations that people limit their alcohol intake to 2 drinks per week, and this is an absolute classic right out of the gates.
What did you buy today?
I bought 6 Busch Light, 6 Bud Light, and I love them, tall boys.
Tall boys? How much would you drink a day?
Well, what day? Regular day, I don't know, maybe a couple beers, depends. Weekends, maybe, 5 beer. 2 drinks a week.
What do you think of that?
Well, that's just not feasible, not in this country. Well, come on, man. 2 drinks a week, what's that going to do for you? I mean, that doesn't even get you through a day. A reasonable amount, if you're at home, you should be able to have like 4 beer. That's just 2 more. I mean, I'll have 6. But 4 is a fair number. But there shouldn't even be guidelines anyway. Why are you going to tell me how much I can drink at home?
Well, I guess the idea is, would you be concerned that you're at a higher health risk if you're drinking too much?
No. That's the main point here is, why are they telling me what I can drink at home? What, can I have 2 liters of pop? Can I have 2 liters of pop? Well, what's more healthy, 4 beers or 2 liters of Coca-Cola? Do the math.
So I'm guessing that this information about the new guidelines isn't going to change your life.
It's heartbreaking, and I can't even believe it. Rock and roll! Oh, wait a minute. You can't handle the tooth.
So for people listening on the podcast, Buddy's missing one of his front chompers, and he rolls out and says, "You can't handle the tooth." Just leaving that in the wake. Unbelievable. He's not wrong about the 2 liters of pop, by the way.
I was going to say that, yeah.
He's not wrong. My favorite line in the whole thing, that's just not feasible. That guy, an absolute legend already. Kudos to the reporter who sniffed him out, and we had some fun with it. That's CHCH TV out of St. Catharines, Ontario. If you see something that absolutely makes you laugh, I feel like I have tears in the corners of my eyes right now from giggling, and I've seen it 5 times already. Send it to us. talk@ryanjesperson.com. Positive Reflections is presented by our amazing friends at Kuby Renewable Energy. You can get a free solar quote today at kubyenergy.ca. Hey, do you remember Rick Peterson, chair of Peterson Capital? He's a money guy, right? He sought the Conservative leadership 2 races ago. He founded that Center Ice Canadians movement. Well, Rick, as mentioned, keeps an eye on balance sheets and bottom lines, and he says that this Alberta pension plan is a bad idea, but not ideologically. He's talking strategically. We're going to find out why coming up tomorrow. That's Tuesday's Real Talk. Later in the week, we'll talk to Valentine Lowe, royal correspondent for The Times. How are Prince Harry's bombshells landing in London? And as mentioned, our Real Talk Roundtable coming up this Friday, presented by Urban Timber. We'll talk to 3 founding members of Progressive PAC. What's this political action committee all about? What are they hoping to achieve? And is this an indictment of NDP strategy? We'll get into those questions and more on this week of Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.